The deep space vessel Wandering Light drifted through the empty sector of space that galactic maps called the Dead Zone. Chief Researcher Velther stood before the observation window, his four eyes scanning the darkness ahead. His species, the Aquilon, had been exploring the galaxy for 3,000 years, but they had never ventured this far into the Orion Spur. Nobody had. There was nothing here but dust and silence. "Chief, you need to see this," called out Navigator Kesh from her station. Her tentacles moved rapidly across the control panel, pulling up data streams that made no sense. Velther moved to her station, his footsteps echoing in the quiet bridge. "What am I looking at?" "Metal signatures. Thousands of them. Some are small, maybe the size of our ship. Others are—" She paused, checking the readings again. "Others are the size of moons." The crew fell silent. Moon-sized objects didn't occur naturally in space, not in organized patterns. And the scanners were showing very organized patterns. "Take us closer," Velther ordered. Slowly, as the Wandering Light moved forward, the star system came into view. A yellow sun, long dead, sat at the center. Orbiting, it was a single planet, blue and green even after all this time. Two moons circled the planet, and between them floated structures that defied belief. Ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships they hung in the darkness like sleeping giants, their hulls dark and cold. Some were sleek and small, barely larger than the Wandering Light. Others were massive beyond understanding, their surfaces covered in weapons and armor plating that still gleamed despite the passage of time. "How long have they been here?" Velther whispered. Kesh ran the analysis. Her face paled. "Chief, the radioactive decay suggests 500,000 years. Maybe more." The number didn't make sense. Nothing could survive that long in space. Ships degraded, fell apart, turned to dust. Yet here they were, perfect and whole, as if their crews had just stepped away yesterday. "Can you identify the species that built them?" Velther asked. The ship's computer began analyzing the hull designs, the weapon configurations, the energy signatures that still leaked from the dormant vessels. After several minutes, it produced an answer that made Velther's blood run cold. Species designation: human. Status: extinct. Last known activity: 500,000 years ago. Humans. The Galactic Council had records of them. Fragments of data recovered from ancient ruins scattered across the galaxy. They had been a powerful species once, conquering half the known universe before vanishing without explanation. No one knew what had happened to them. Most scholars assumed they had destroyed themselves in some great war, but this didn't look like the aftermath of a war. These ships were undamaged, carefully positioned, waiting. "Send the probe to the nearest vessel," Velther ordered. "Let's see what we can learn." The probe launched, a small silver sphere that crossed the distance in minutes. It approached one of the smaller ships, what the database identified as a frigate, though it was still twice the size of the Wandering Light. The probe's cameras transmitted images back to the bridge. The frigate's hull was smooth and unmarked. No battle scars, no debris impacts, nothing to suggest it had ever seen combat. At the probe's approach, something unexpected happened. Lights flickered along the ship's surface, dim and red, like a pulse. "It's still active," Kesh breathed. "After 500,000 years, it's still active." Velther made a decision that would change everything. "Prepare a boarding team. We're going inside." The council would be furious when they found out, but Velther didn't care. This was the discovery of a lifetime, maybe the discovery of the age. He had to know what was inside those ships. 6 hours later, Velther stood in the airlock of the human frigate, his boarding team behind him. They had docked without incident, the ancient ship's airlock accepting their connection as if it had been expecting visitors. The door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Inside, the ship was dark, but not dead. Emergency lights glowed along the corridors, casting everything in a red hue. The air was stale but breathable. Temperature sensors showed it was cold, just above freezing. "Stay together," Valther ordered. "Record everything." They moved through the corridors, their footsteps the first sounds these halls had heard in millennia. The ship's interior was vast, with corridors wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. Rooms branched off in every direction, most of them sealed in one room. They found stations with screens and controls, all dark. In another, they found what looked like living quarters, beds made and waiting. In a third, they found something that made them stop. Chambers, hundreds of them, lining the walls like glass coffins. Inside each chamber was a human, perfectly preserved, their skin pale, their eyes closed. They looked like they were sleeping. "Are they dead?" asked Baora, the security officer. Valther approached one of the chambers. The human inside was male, young, wearing some kind of uniform. A name tag on his chest read a word in human script that the translator rendered as Taysun. "No," Valther said, checking the chamber's readings. "They're alive, suspended somehow. This chamber is keeping them frozen in time." There were more chambers on other decks, thousands of them throughout the ship. If every ship in the fleet had this many humans aboard, then billions of them were sleeping here, waiting. The waiting for what? Valther made his way to the bridge, where the ship's main computer would be. The door opened at his approach, recognizing any living presence after so long alone. Inside, the bridge was magnificent, with screens covering every wall and a command chair that faced a massive window. Looking out into space, he approached the main terminal and placed his hand on it. The screen flickered to life. Text appeared, first in human script, then shifting to Galactic Standard as the computer recognized him as non-human. Identifying visitor, non-human life form detected. Awakening protocol initialized. "Wait," Valther said. "What protocol?" But the computer wasn't listening to him. Throughout the ship, systems began coming online. Lights brightened. The hum of engines filled the corridors. And in the medical bay, one of the stasis chambers began to open. The chamber holding Tay-Sun. The young human's eyes opened for the first time in 500,000 years. He drew a breath, coughed, and sat up slowly. His eyes were confused, unfocused. "Status report," he said in human language. The translator in Valther's rendered it into Galactic Standard. "Where am I? What year is it? Has the enemy returned?" Valther stared at him, unable to answer. What enemy? What had these humans been waiting for? And all around them, across thousands of ships, more chambers began to wake. Taysun's mind felt like it was swimming through thick mud. Memories came back slowly, in pieces. He remembered his name. He remembered his ship. He remembered the mission. But the details were fuzzy, hidden behind a wall of time. He looked around the medical bay and saw creatures he didn't recognize. Aliens. Strange beings, with multiple eyes. Tentacles, skin and colors that shouldn't exist. For a moment, panic seized him. Had the enemy taken new forms? Had they breached the defenses? "Please remain calm," one of the aliens said. The words came through in his mind, translated by some technology. "We mean no harm. We are researchers from the Galactic Council." Galactic Council? Taysun tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. How long had he been asleep? What happened to the Terran command? Where's Admiral Hyrin? The aliens exchanged looks. The one who had spoken, who appeared to be their leader, stepped forward carefully. "My name is Valther. I am afraid we have much to discuss. You have been in stasis for a very long time. How long? 500,000 years. Pho. Perhaps more. The number hit Tae-san like a physical blow. 500,000 years. Everyone he had ever known was dust. Earth itself might be unrecognizable. The mission. Had the mission lasted this long? The sensors, Tae-san said urgently. I need to check the sensors. If I've been awakened, it means something triggered the protocols. He forced himself to stand, ignoring the protests from his body. His training took over, pushing past the confusion and fear. He was a guardian. He had a job to do. Velther and his team followed as Tae-san made his way to the bridge. The ship recognized him, doors opening automatically, systems powering up at his presence. It felt like coming home, even after all this time. On the bridge, Tae-san placed his hand on the command terminal. The ship's AI came online, its voice filling the room. Welcome back, Guardian Tae-san. I am Woo Jin, ship intelligence of the frigate Eternal Sentinel. Awakening protocols initiated due to unauthorized access by non-human entities. Threat assessment, minimal. However, external scans showed dimensional instability at levels requiring investigation. Dimensional instability? Tae-san's blood went cold. Show me. The main screen lit up with data that made his heart race. The barriers between dimensions were fluctuating. It was minor, barely noticeable, but it was there. Something was testing the walls, probing for weaknesses. Woo Jin, begin full diagnostic of the dimensional gates. I need to know if they're holding. Acknowledged. Beginning scan. Estimated time, 6 hours. Tae-san turned to Velther and his team. They were watching him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. He realized they had no idea what they had stumbled into. You need to leave, Tae-san said. This system isn't safe. None of this region is safe. We have many questions, Velther said. Your species, your ships. What happened here? I'll answer what I can, Tae-san interrupted. But first, I need to understand what's happening. Woo Jin, show our guests the archive. Protocol Level 1. They deserve to know what they've walked into. The ship's I hesitated for a moment, then complied. Holographic images filled the bridge, showing scenes from 500,000 years ago. Earth, beautiful and green, orbited by massive space stations. Fleets of ships moving between the stars. Humans spreading across the galaxy, building, exploring, thriving. It was the golden age of humanity, when they believed the universe was theirs to inherit. Then the images changed. Space itself began to tear. Rifts opened between dimensions, and through them came things that should not exist. The Devourers, humanity called them. Creatures of pure entropy, beings that existed to unmake reality itself. They didn't want to conquer. They wanted to consume, to reduce everything to nothing. The war that followed lasted 10,000 years. Velther watched as human ships engaged the Devourers in battles that destroyed entire star systems. Weapons that bent reality, that turned stars into bombs, that collapsed space itself. The humans fought with a desperation born of knowing that if they lost, existence itself would end, and somehow, impossibly, they won. The final battle showed Admiral Hai Rin, standing on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Eternal Dawn. She looked tired, ancient despite her relatively young face. Around her, what remained of humanity's military leadership watched as the last dimensional gate was sealed. We've won, someone said in the recording. It's over. No, Hai Rin replied. It's never over. They'll come back. Maybe in 1,000 years, maybe in 1,000,000. But they'll come back. They always do. So what do we do? Hai Rin turned to face the camera, and Tae-san felt his heart ache. He remembered her now. Remembered serving under her command. Remembered the day she announced protocol, eternal vigil. We wait, she said. We build a fortress from every world we've claimed. We position our fleets at every strategic point. And we sleep. All of us. The A is will watch the sensors. If the Devourers return, they'll wake us. Until then, we rest. Our children deserve better than to live their entire lives standing guard against an enemy that might never come. The hologram faded. The bridge fell silent. You've been sleeping for 500,000 years, Velther whispered. Standing guard over a galaxy that forgot you existed. Not sleeping, Tayson corrected. Waiting. And now something's triggered the wake-up protocols. Bara, the security officer, spoke up. Could it have been us? We ran deep scans of the system, used quantum sensors. Quantum sensors. Wu Jin interrupted. Analysis complete. The dimensional instability correlates with the quantum scanning performed by the Aquilon vessel 6 hours ago. The scans created ripples in subspace that echoed across dimensional barriers. Taesung closed his eyes. You rang the dinner bell. The Devourers are blind, but they can feel vibrations in the fabric of reality. You just sent out a signal that intelligent life exists here again. But the gates are still sealed, Velther said hopefully. That means you're safe, right? The gates are weakening, Wu Jin reported. Estimated time until first breach, 72 hours. Recommend full fleet awakening immediately. Taesun moved to the communication console. His hand shook slightly as he entered the command codes, passwords that he had memorized 500,000 years ago and never forgotten. All ships, this is Guardian Taesun of the Eternal Sentinel. Authorization code Omega 77. Begin awakening sequence. Protocol. Eternal Vigil is now active. The enemy is returning. I repeat, the enemy is returning. Across the system, across hundreds of nearby systems, the human fleet began to wake. Lights flickered on across massive dreadnoughts. Weapons systems performed diagnostic checks. And in millions of stasis chambers, billions of humans opened their eyes for the first time in 500,000 years. Velther watched through the window as the fleet came to life around them. What have we done? You've woken the Guardians, Tayson said quietly. Now let's hope we remember how to fight. The awakening spread like wildfire across human space. On the moon of Jupiter, the defense platform Iron Shield powered up its reactors. In the Andromeda sector, carrier groups that had slept in the darkness between stars came alive with purpose. On Mars, in vast underground facilities, military personnel stumbled from their chambers. Confused and frightened, but ready, aboard the Eternal Sentinel. Taesun coordinated with the ship's AI while Velther's team watched in amazement. The humans spoke in rapid commands, checking systems that had been offline for longer than most species had existed. Wu Jin, status on the main fleet? 7,000 capital ships now online. 300,000 support vessels operational. Ground forces awakening on 47 worlds. Admiral Hyrin's flagship, the Eternal Dawn, is responding. She requests immediate communication. Taesun's hands paused over the console. Hyrin, the woman who had led humanity through its darkest hour. The admiral who had made the choice to put everyone to sleep rather than waste lives on an endless watch. She was alive. She was awake. Put her through. The screen flickered and a woman's face appeared. She looked exactly as Taesun remembered her sharp eyes. Dark hair pulled back, a scar on her left cheek from a battle long ago. But there was something different in her expression. A weight that came from waking up to find that no time had passed for her. But the universe had aged 500,000 years. Guardian Taesun, she said, her voice steady and calm. Report. Admiral. The Aquilon research vessel Wandering Light entered human space and performed quantum scans of the system. The scans created dimensional ripples. The Devourers have detected them. Hyrin's expression didn't change, but Tae-sun saw her grip the armrest of her command chair a little tighter. Time until breach? Woo-jin estimates 72 hours. The dimensional gates are holding, but they're weakening. Then, we have 3 days to remember how to be soldiers again. Hai-rin looked past Tae-sun to where Velther stood. That's the Aquilon who woke you. Yes, Admiral. Chief Researcher Velther. He and his team didn't know what they were dealing with. Hai-rin studied Velther for a long moment. Researcher, your species has records of humanity, yes? Velther stepped forward, trying to hide his nervousness. We do, Admiral. Ancient records. Most of our people believe humans are extinct. We chose to appear that way. The alternative was to force every human to live their entire lives preparing for a war that might never come. Tell me, does the Galactic Council remember the Devourers? I've never heard of them. Good. That means the seals held. The barriers we built kept them out long enough that the younger species never had to face them. Hai-rin stood from her chair. But they're coming back, and your people aren't ready. None of the current species are ready. You've never had to fight an enemy that wants to unmake reality itself. On the moon orbiting Earth, Captain Jinho climbed out of his stasis chamber and immediately checked his equipment. His body ached, his mind felt foggy, but his training kicked in automatically. Around him, his crew was waking up, hundreds of soldiers and officers who had fought in the war against the Devourers. Captain, his second-in-command Daeun, appeared at his side. She looked pale but determined. What's our status? We're at war again, Jinho said simply. Get everyone to their stations. I want all lunar defenses operational within the hour. Daeun nodded and began barking orders. Within minutes, the chaos of awakening transformed into organized military precision. Humans might have slept for 500,000 years, but they hadn't forgotten how to fight. Back on the Eternal Sentinel, Wu Jin's voice cut through the bridge. Alert. Dimensional barrier at point 739 showing signs of failure. First breach predicted in 48 hours. They're coming faster than expected, Tae-sun said. Admiral, we need to evacuate the Galactic Council species from the rim sectors. Hai-rin shook her head. We don't have time. If we pull back to protect them, the Devourers will gain a foothold. We need to meet them at the barrier and destroy them before they establish a beachhead. Velther listened to this exchange with growing horror. How do you fight something that unmakes reality? It was Tae-sun who answered. With weapons that remake it. Wu Jin, show them the arsenal. The ship's eye displayed the weapon systems of a human dreadnought. Velther's team stared in disbelief. Singularity cannons that created miniature black holes. Entropy missiles that age matter 1 billion years in seconds. Reality anchors that stabilized space-time itself. Weapons that operated on principles the Galactic Council had never dreamed of. These weapons, Subin, the Aquilon biological officer whispered. They could destroy entire civilizations. They were designed to destroy something worse, Tae-sun replied. The Devourers don't have ships or bodies the way you understand them. They're living concepts, ideas of destruction given form. You can't shoot them with lasers. You can't blow them up with missiles. You have to fight them with weapons that attack the very laws of physics. Hai-rin's image on the screen looked grim. Researcher Velther, I recommend you take your ship and flee to the Galactic Core. Take word to the Council. Tell them that humanity has returned and we're going to war. Tell them to stay out of our way. But this isn't a negotiation. In 48 hours, this region of space is going to become a battlefield. The things we're about to do, the weapons we're about to use, they'll reshape entire sectors. Any ship caught in the crossfire will be destroyed, not by us, but by the forces we're unleashing. Who had been silent until now, stepped forward. What can we do? How can the Council help? Hyrin seemed surprised by the question. You want to help? You've been sleeping for 500,000 years, protecting a galaxy that forgot you existed. Yes, we want to help. For the first time, Hyrin smiled. It was a small smile, sad and tired, but genuine. Then spread the word. Make sure the younger species know that humanity didn't abandon them. We were always here, standing watch, waiting to protect them if the darkness returned. Across human space, the awakening continued. On Earth itself, in the ruins of cities that had crumbled to dust, automated systems began to reactivate. Gardens that had been tended by machines for 500,000 years suddenly had human hands to care for them again. Libraries filled with the accumulated knowledge of a species prepared themselves for readers who could finally understand them. But there was no time for homecoming. The fleet assembled in formation, thousands of ships arranging themselves in patterns that had been planned hundreds of thousands of years ago. Every captain knew their position. Every gunner knew their targets. Every engineer knew which systems needed priority. They had drilled for this. They had prepared for this. They had sacrificed everything for this dot, and now, finally, the moment had come. All ships. Admiral Hyrin's voice broadcast across the fleet. This is Admiral Hyrin of the Eternal Dawn. We have slept for 500,000 years. We have waited while the galaxy forgot us. We have maintained our vigil while new species rose and flourished. Today, that vigil ends. Today, we fight. Not for glory, not for conquest, but for the right of all beings to exist. The Devourers are coming. Let's remind them why they feared humanity. The response came from thousands of ships at once. For humanity. For the galaxy. For all that lives. And in the darkness at the edge of reality, the dimensional barriers began to crack. The dimensional barrier broke exactly 47 hours after Tayson's awakening. Not at the predicted point, but at 3 points simultaneously, as if the Devourers had learned from their last defeat. Captain Jinho watched from the Lunar Command Center as reality itself began to tear. The screen showed nothing at first, just empty space near the galactic rim. Then the sensors detected its space folding in on itself, dimensions bleeding into each other, the laws of physics beginning to fail. All batteries, prepare to fire, Jinho ordered. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. They had been asleep for 500,000 years, but muscle memory was a powerful thing. Target the breach points. Fire on my mark. The lunar defense platforms opened fire. Beams of concentrated energy lanced out across space, striking at the tiers in reality. But the Devourers were already coming through. They didn't look like ships or creatures. They looked like wounds in the universe, dark spaces where nothing should exist. Where they moved, stars flickered and died. Where they touched, matter simply ceased to be. Entropy readings are off the scale, Dayun reported. Captain, they're bigger than in the historical records. Either they've grown, or these are older ones. It doesn't matter, Jinho said. They bleed the same way. Continue firing. Aboard the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Hyrin coordinated the fleet's response. The massive dreadnought hung in space like a small moon, its hull bristling with weapons that no longer existed in any other species' arsenal. Fleet Delta, move to intercept Breach Point Alpha. Fleet Gamma, take Beta. Fleet Epsilon, hold position at the barrier. Don't let any of them slip past. Her voice was calm, measured, despite the fact that reality itself was unraveling at the edge of her sensors. Tayson, still aboard the Eternal Sentinel, watched as the human fleet engaged the enemy. The battle was like nothing the universe had seen in 500,000 years. Human ships fired weapons that bent space-time, creating pockets of stable reality around the Devourers and then collapsing them. The Devourers retaliated with waves of entropy, aging ships centuries in seconds. But human engineers had designed their vessels to resist such attacks. Velthar and his team watched from the safety of the Sentinel's bridge. They had tried to leave, as Hiron suggested, but the quantum disruptions made faster-than-light travel impossible. They were trapped here, witnesses to a war they could barely comprehend. Why don't the Devourers have weapons? Subin asked. They're just existing. That's their weapon, Tyson explained, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. They unmake things by touching them. They don't need guns when their mere presence destroys matter. Watch. A human frigate, caught too close to a Devourer, began to age rapidly. Its hull corroded, its systems failed, and within seconds it was nothing but debris. But before the Devourer could move on, 3 more human ships converged on it, firing reality anchors, devices that forced normal physics to reassert themselves. The Devourer writhed, if such a thing could writhe, and then collapsed into nothing. They can be killed, Vaura observed, but at great cost. Every battle with them is a war of attrition, Tayson said. They're not alive the way you understand life. They're manifestations of entropy itself. The only way to stop them is to impose order on chaos, and that takes energy. A lot of energy. The battle raged for hours. Human ships fell, their crews dying to protect a galaxy that didn't even know they existed anymore. But for every ship lost, 2 Devourers were destroyed. The humans had learned from their previous war, had refined their tactics, had built better weapons. On Earth, people watched the battle on screens that hadn't been used in 500,000 years. Children who had been put to sleep as infants woke to find themselves in a war they didn't understand. Parents who had said goodbye to their families, just for a little while, discovered that everyone they knew was either here, awakened for war, or had chosen to stay in stasis until peace returned. Admiral Hiron made a difficult decision. All civilian populations, this is your admiral. I know you're confused. I know you're scared. But I need you to trust me one more time. Return to stasis. We'll wake you when this is over. Admiral, one of her officers protested. They have a right to be awake. They have a right to live. Hiron cut him off. And if the Devourers break through our lines, if they reach the inner systems, everyone dies. We put them to sleep to spare them from a life of waiting. Let's not wake them just to watch them die. It was a hard order, but it was obeyed. Across human space, civilians returned to their stasis chambers. Parents kissed their children goodbye again. Lovers held each other one last time. And then they slept, trusting that the military would protect them, just as they had trusted 500,000 years ago. The fleet grew more aggressive. With no civilians to protect, with nothing behind them but sleeping billions, the human military could take risks. Captain Jinho ordered the lunar platforms to overload their reactors, creating massive explosions that took out entire groups of Devourers at once. We're losing platforms faster than we can rebuild them, Dayun warned. Then we use them while we have them, Jinho replied. Fire everything. Hold nothing back. In the command center of the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Hiron watched as the tide of battle began to turn. The Devourers were being pushed back toward the breaches. If humanity could force them back through and seal the dimensional gates again, they would win. But then Wu Jin's voice cut through the bridge of the Eternal Sentinel. Alert. 4th breach opening. Coordinates sending now. Classification. Apex Devourer. Taysum felt his blood go cold. No, it can't be. What's an Apex Devourer? Velthar asked. The generals, Taysum whispered. The leaders of their kind. We thought we killed them all in the last war, but if one survived... The 4th breach tore open, and something came through that made the other Devourers look small. It was vast, a darkness so complete that it seemed to swallow light itself. Where it emerged, entire sections of space simply stopped existing. All fleets, converge on Breach Point Delta, Hiren ordered. I don't care what it takes. That thing cannot be allowed to establish itself in our reality. But the Apex Devourer was faster than its smaller counterparts. It moved through space like a shark through water, heading directly for the inner systems. Directly for Earth. It remembers, Tae-sun said. It remembers where humanity comes from. It's going for the homeworld. Captain Jinho saw it coming. Every sensor on the moon screamed warnings. Every calculation showed the same result. The lunar defenses couldn't stop it. Nothing could stop it except Daiyun, Jinho said quietly. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to the shelters. Captain, that's an order. And once they're safe, I need you to set the reactor to critical overload. Daiyun stared at him. Sir, if we do that, the entire moon becomes a bomb big enough to hurt that thing. Maybe not kill it, but hurt it enough that the fleet can finish the job. We'll die. We've been dead for 500,000 years. At least this time, it'll mean something. On the Eternal Sentinel, Tae-sun made a decision. Ujin, plot a course to intercept the Apex Devourer. Maximum speed. Guardian Tae-sun, the Sentinel is not equipped to engage an Apex-class entity. I know, but we can slow it down. Every second we buy is another second for the main fleet to reach it. Valther grabbed Tae-sun's arm. This is suicide. This is duty, Tae-sun replied. It's what we've always done. Ujin, engage. The Eternal Sentinel leaped forward, racing towards certain death, one small ship against the embodiment of entropy itself. The Eternal Sentinel was not built to fight Apex Devourers. It was a frigate, designed for patrol and escort duty. But Tae-sun pushed it to its limits anyway. The small ship screaming through space on an intercept course with the massive entity heading for Earth. All weapons, fire at will, Tae-sun ordered. Target its leading edge. We need to make it notice us. The frigate's weapons open fire. Reality anchors, singularity charges, entropy missiles, everything in the arsenal launched at once. The weapons struck the Apex Devourer, and for a moment, just a moment, it slowed dot. It turned toward them. It's working, Valther said, though his voice shook with fear. It's changing course. Not enough, Tae-sun replied. Ujin, prepare to ram. Full speed. The Guardian Tae-sun, ramming an Apex entity will result in complete destruction of this vessel. I know. Do it anyway. But before the Sentinel could complete its suicide run, a massive shape appeared between them and the Devourer. The Eternal Dawn, Admiral Hiren's flagship, dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in the Apex Devourer's path. All ships, on me. Hiren's voice broadcast across the fleet. This is what we've been waiting for. This is what we trained for. Show this thing why humanity survived. The entire human fleet converged on the Apex Devourer. Thousands of ships, from massive dreadnoughts to small fighters, all focusing their fire on a single target. The space around Earth lit up like a new sun as weapons that bent reality itself fired in unison. The Apex Devourer fought back. Its mere presence caused ships to age and fail. Entire squadrons vanished as entropy consumed them. But humanity had faced this before and learned from it. All ships, activate temporal shields, Hiren ordered. Don't let it age you. Rotate attack patterns. When your shields fail, fall back and let fresh ships take over. Captain Jinho watched from the moon as the battle raged in orbit above. The Apex Devourer was being pushed back slowly, but the cost was terrible. Ships fell by the dozens, by the hundreds. But for every ship lost, humanity's resolve grew stronger. Daiyun, Jinho said, cancel the overload sequence. They're doing it. They're actually winning. But he spoke too soon. The Apex Devourer, sensing it was losing, did something the smaller Devourers never could. It opened new breaches. Dozens of them, hundreds, each one spilling more of its kind into reality. In seconds, the battlefield went from manageable to overwhelming. "Admiral," one of Hiren's officers reported, "we're being flanked on all sides. We can't hold this many." Hiren's jaw tightened. They had come so far, fought so hard, only to face defeat now? No, she refused to accept it. "All ships, fall back to Earth orbit. Form a defensive sphere. We protect the homeworld at all costs." The fleet retreated, forming a massive barrier around the planet. And the Devourers came at them like a tide of darkness, ready to consume everything. But then something unexpected happened. Ships began appearing. Not human ships. Aquilon vessels. And behind them, fleets from a dozen other species. The Galactic Council had come. Velther, still aboard the Sentinel, grabbed the communication console. "Admiral Hiren, this is Research Vessel Wandering Light. We've brought help." "Researcher," Hiren said, surprised. "I told you to flee." "We did. We fled straight to the Council and told them everything. They've mobilized every ship they could spare. We know our weapons won't hurt the Devourers, but we can help in other ways." And they did. The Council ships couldn't destroy the Devourers, but they could evacuate damaged human vessels. They could provide supplies and ammunition. They could serve as shields, buying time for human ships to recharge their reality-warping weapons. The battle became a desperate melee. Human ships fired and fell back. Council ships darted in to rescue survivors. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn again. "Focus all fire on the apex," Hiren commanded. "If we kill it, the others will lose coordination." Every human ship that could still fight turned toward the massive entity at the center of the swarm. The Eternal Dawn led the charge, its weapons blazing. The Apex Devourer reeled under the assault, its form flickering and unstable. Taisung, in the Sentinel, saw an opening. "Wujian, do we still have the prototype weapon? The reality bomb?" "Yes, but it has never been tested. The theoretical yield could destroy everything within a light year, including the Apex. Theoretical models suggest it would work. However, load it. Prepare to fire on my mark." The Eternal Sentinel accelerated toward the Apex Devourer. Velther and his team strapped themselves into safety harnesses. Trusting this human, they barely knew with their lives. "Tassan," Velther called out. "If this doesn't work, then we die like everyone else who's fought this thing. But if it does work, you tell the galaxy our story. Tell them humanity never abandoned them." The Sentinel drove deep into the swarm, dodging smaller Devourers, racing toward the apex. At the last moment, Taesun fired the reality bomb. The weapon didn't explode in the traditional sense. Instead, it rewrote the laws of physics in a sphere around the Apex Devourer. For a brief moment, entropy reversed. Order asserted itself. And the Apex, a being of pure chaos, couldn't exist in that space. It screamed. If something without a voice could scream, and then it simply ceased to be. The smaller Devourers, suddenly, without their general, fell into disarray. The human fleet pressed the advantage, destroying them one by one. Within hours, the last Devourer was pushed back through a dimensional breach, and the gates were sealed once more. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but the cost was severe. A third of the fleet was destroyed. Thousands of humans were dead, their second chance at life cut short. Earth's moon bore scars that would take decades to heal. Admiral Hiren stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, looking at the casualty reports. So many names. So many lives ended before they could truly begin again. "Admiral," her communications officer said softly, "the Galactic Council is requesting to speak with you." The screen lit up, showing representatives from dozens of species. Velther stood among them, his research vessel having docked with the Council's flagship. "Admiral Hai Rin," the Council speaker said, "on behalf of all the species of this galaxy, we thank you. You and your people saved us from a threat we didn't know existed." "We were always here," Hai Rin replied. "Always watching. Always ready. We would like to propose an alliance. Let humanity rejoin the galactic community. Share your knowledge, your technology." "No," Hai Rin said firmly. "The younger species need to develop on their own. They need to make their own mistakes, find their own path. If we give you our weapons, you'll use them on each other. We've seen it before. Then what will you do?" Hai Rin looked out at her fleet, at the ships that had fought and bled for a galaxy that had forgotten them. "We'll do what we've always done. We'll watch. We'll wait. Most of us will return to stasis. But this time, we'll leave some awake. Ambassadors to teach you about the Devourers. Advisors to help you strengthen the dimensional barriers. And if the darkness comes again, we'll be ready." She turned to look directly at the Council. "We ask only one thing in return. Remember us. Tell your children about the humans who slept for 500,000 years to keep them safe. Let our sacrifice mean something." The Council agreed. In the weeks that followed, most of humanity returned to sleep. They had lived and fought and won, and now they could rest again. But some stayed awake. Taesun volunteered to be humanity's ambassador, along with a few hundred others who would rotate in shifts over the coming centuries. Captain Jinho and Diyun chose to stay awake as well, rebuilding the lunar defenses and teaching the younger species how to detect dimensional breaches. Admiral Hai Rin gave one final speech before returning to stasis herself. "We are the Guardians. We are the Watchers. We are the last line of defense against the darkness. And we will endure for as long as we are needed." Valthar, who had witnessed it all, wrote a book about humanity's return. It became required reading in every council school. Children learned about the sleeping giants who protected them. Scientists studied the dimensional barriers. Soldiers trained in tactics developed over 10,000 years of war. And in the darkness between galaxies, the sensors remained active, tended by humans and AI alike, watching, waiting, because the Devourers would come again someday. They always did. But when they came, humanity would be ready. They always were. The price of peace, after all, was eternal vigilance. And humanity had proven they were willing to pay that price, no matter how long the wait, no matter how many times they had to wake from sleep to fight. They were the Guardians, and they would never abandon their post.